all across the fantasy universe. Welcome one and all to the 2-Point Stance, powered by fantasypoints.com. I'm your host, Brian Drake, at Drake Fantasy on Twitter/X. I'll kowtow down there since they're throttling down all my tweets and links. I'll call them X, I guess. Joined as always by the managing editor of fantasypoints.com, my dear friend, Mr. Joe Dolan at FG_Dolan. Joe, what's up, man? How are things going? Your Phillies are advancing in the playoffs.
Oh yeah. The Phils were keeping me up here. My wife got mad at me because I was drinking on a Tuesday. The Phils are in the playoffs. What am I supposed to do? You know, like come on. You know, they're advancing. They're going to play the Braves. They knocked them out of the playoffs last year. And I'm going to hope and they're going to do the same thing this year. They win one in Atlanta and get it back to Citizens Bank Park. The Braves are going to be pissing their pants. But no, I'm having a good time. I'm glad that they advanced, so I didn't have to watch them play on Thursday night because I wanted to watch a football game, obviously. They play on Monday, but it's at 6 p.m., so I should be able to watch the football game. They don't play on Sunday, which is great. So not only did they advance, but their schedule is lining up well for me to actually be able to pay attention to my job, which is really good.
I love that. That's fantastic. Speaking of that Thursday game, and here on the 2-Point Stance, when you listen to us every end of the week, Friday-ish or so, when you're getting around to the 2-pointer, we go game by game and talk about all the fantasy relevant nuggets. But we want to talk about the Thursday night game, which sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. What a weird game. Not only weird because the Bears won their first game in almost a calendar year, but there's a lot of things to unpack here, Joe. Number one, how Ron Rivera still has a job just mystifies me because he's had 3 winning seasons in 13 years and hasn't had one since 2017. But then Justin Fields comes out, looks amazing. If you listen to anything this morning about the Bears, there's not a more delusional fan base in America. I listen to ESPN. I listen to Hansen's show with Kaplan in the morning. There's guys calling in, legit call, Joe. Guy called into Hansen and Kaplan today. Goes, if the Bears trade for Justin Fields, are they Super Bowl contenders? Kaplan fell out of the chair. And guys were calling in ESPN radio talking about the Bears are back. Dude, you won 1 game in a year. Okay, congratulations. Justin Fields looked good. I still think they should get rid of Justin Fields and get Caleb Williams, but whatever. We'll get into all that.
Oh, of course. I mean, look. First and foremost, yes, Justin Fields played a good game. He played a pretty good game against Denver, and I'll give him a lot of credit, first and foremost, for not collapsing, because what I saw last Sunday when he was walking off the field after the Bears blew a 3-score lead to the Broncos, and he had the fumble 6 and the game-ending interception, I saw his face, and I'm like, this kid's broken. He is utterly and completely broken. Like, he literally just had his first 300-yard passing game in the NFL, and it wasn't enough, and the Bears still lost. I thought it was ripe for utter disaster. And then he comes out on national television and plays another good game. I mean, that at least shows something about the individual. I'm not all of a sudden about to say Justin Fields is going to win NFL MVP because he played a good Thursday night game against the Commanders. You say Ron Rivera, I say Jack Del Rio.
Both of them. They're both terrible. Neither of them should be in the league right now. Ron Rivera, great guy. Amazing story. Terrible head coach. I mean, his teams are mediocre at best.
I don't think terrible head coach is the right term, because I think he's the right guy, or at least was the right guy for this team to bring some respectability and some honor to a locker room for a team that was owned by Daniel Snyder. But it's not a worth a debate because he's not going to have a job past this year. The other quarterback I'm also interested in Sam Howell. He does a lot of things I like, but like, he got sacked 5 times by a team that's basically been averaging 1 sack a game over the last year and a half. And look, there is where you say, oh, sacks are a quarterback stat. I mean, that's that box right there. Like, Sam Howell, sacks are a Sam Howell stat. I mean, he's on pace to be sacked over 100 times this year. So he gets sacked way too much. But hey, that is what it is. It was an interesting game. If you started Sam Howell, I made a tweet early in the week. I was like, man, if the choice is Sam Howell against the Bears or Joe Burrow this week, a hobbled Joe Burrow, he can say all he wants. He's still hobbled. with no T. Higgins, I said it was easy for me. It was Sam Howell, and Sam Howell put 31 points up. So at the very least, he got it done. Khalil Herbert got hurt. Brian, did you see the stat from the Commanders?
Which one? What about the 55 consecutive dropbacks?
They dropped back to pass 55 consecutive times, which is the most in like PFF's history without a design. I cannot believe Andy Reid didn't do that with Donovan McNabb at some point.
I have that right. Yes. Nathan Yonke, my friend, tweeted that out. 55 straight pass attempts without a designed run from 8:49 in the second quarter until the end of the game. It's the most for a team since PFF started charting it back in 2006. That is incredible.
That has to be an NFL record, because like
55 straight.
I mean, I guess maybe Andy in the Donovan years, like when you knew, like as good as those Eagles teams were, everybody was like, why don't we have a 290-pound running back? You know, like, but yeah. So
Stump Mitchell.
Just a really weird game. Credit to the Bears. Matt Eberflus, and I actually think Luke Getsy's done a nice job here the last couple of weeks with Justin Fields. You know, get play action, move the pocket a little bit. DJ Moore, by the way, he's been wide ass open all year. It's just now Justin Fields is actually hitting him. So DJ Moore's a really good receiver, and I think people saw that on. If you were watching the Nerdcast, the Amazon Nerdcast, where you could see the all 22. That opening drive where he had the long catch down the sideline, and also he had the long catch down the sideline and also the touchdown. I mean, you could see like the seas just parting. The Commanders just couldn't cover them. They blew coverage. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, and if you started DJ Moore, congratulations. I mean, you probably got 40, 50 points or something like that, depending on your scoring. He's awesome. And we'll get to his former team, who has now come out this week, said, we're trying to trade for a number one receiver. Well, why didn't you just draft Anthony Richardson or CJ Stroud, and they could be throwing the ball to DJ Moore? Yeah. And now you're going to spend more assets to get a number one receiver? Who's going to give you a number one receiver? They don't just grow on trees.
Anyway. Well, Drake, we got a preview to get to, don't we?
We do, and there's a game in London. Again, I'm going to call them the London Jaguars. They're there two weeks in a row with the Buffalo Bills. Now, the Bills are considered the home team for this game, I guess. Okay. 9:30 a.m. start out in, is that Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? I don't know anything about soccer.
Yes, Tottenham Hotspur, yes.
Seems like a cool stadium to me. Bills are 5.5-point favorites coming off that whitewashing of the Miami Dolphins last week. So there's a few things that I want to see in this game. Number one, and I stole a bunch of stuff from two different places in fantasy points. Number one, the everything report from Scott Barrett. If you are not on fantasypoints.com and you're not reading Scott's work here, you're behind the eight ball in your fantasy league. Then I took some stuff from Tom Brawley and his Game Hubs and our boy Zach Tribby. I'm trying to show you guys out there when you're listening to this podcast the great content that's available at fantasypoints.com. So here's a great nugget on James Cook, Joe. He did score on a goal line carry. He had 3 of them in the game, 3 goal line carries. Awesome. But the usage is concerning. Just 41% of the snaps last week, which is down from 59%. And he's losing a ton of 2-minute and passing down work to Latavius Murray. I ask you, Mr. Dolan, is James Cook maybe a sell in fantasy right now?
Here's the thing, though, dude. Like, if you got a reliable RB2, what are you selling for? Now, all right, I have a team that has like Achane, Kyron Williams, James Cook, Tony Pollard, and DeAndre Swift on it, okay?
Oh,
you know, you'd be like, oh, Joel, dude, that's a 0 RB team. Seriously, with the except that's more of a hero RB team.
Yeah,
I drafted
Pollard, sure.
But look, that's very possible on that team. Yeah, I'm not really in the business of selling reliable running backs in a good offense, but yes, his touchdown usage is a problem. He did, of course, get one this week when I had the over the rushing yards prop, and he actually salvaged his day with a touchdown. Now, man, I like the way he's played. I like the way this Bills offense is going. Why can't James Cook be their version of Tony Pollard last year's Tony Pollard?
It could be. Yeah, I hope that he can keep things going, but it is concerning. If you're in a super deep league, by the way, pick Latavius Murray up. Why not? Here's a great nugget from Fantasy Points data. Scotty Barrett had this in his everything report. Christian Kirk, okay, in 9 games versus man coverage, okay? He's averaging 10.9 targets per game. That's around wide receiver 3. That's nearly 20 fantasy points per game, okay? All other games, he's averaged, and that's 13 games, 6 targets a game. He's wide receiver 42. What does that mean? If a team plays predominantly man coverage, start Christian Kirk. He is a man coverage machine, and I think that's going to play dividends this week against the Buffalo Bills. That's a great nugget from Scott.
Yeah, it is. And Christian Kirk's been outproducing Calvin Ridley. But could this be a very good Calvin Ridley game? Because obviously no Tre'Davious White here, Drake, out for the season.
Mm-hmm.
He was a guy they would use to shadow number one outside wide receivers. But that's a huge loss for the Bills. And another reason why I might like James Cook more is if Tre'Davious White's going to be out, that's going to hurt their ability to stop opposing teams from scoring. And James Cook is going to be a recipient of checkdowns. I just like this Bills offense a lot. I think this is a fascinating game.
Do you think at all, last point on this game, Dalton Kincaid is starting to get a little more involved in the offense? Again, only 4 for 27 last week. But, they've got to get him a little more involved. He's playing that Cole Beasley role that we talked about before the season started, kind of this underneath slot guy.
I think that's possible. What do you think there?
Well, I think tight end's a wasteland. And if Dalton Kincaid was dropped in your league, he's definitely a guy that I want to pick up and I want to monitor. I saw in the league this week I was in, Tyler Higbee got dropped. So I picked him up. If you can get 8-9 points out of a tight end and let's say a half PPR, again, you're baking a cake and celebrating with your family. So keep an eye on Dalton Kincaid because as this season goes on, he is a rookie, remember. Things could turn around for him. Let's go on to Houston and Atlanta. Really a tale of two teams here who one loves to throw the ball left and right and the other can't throw it at all. CJ Stroud, just incredible what he's done so far. Here's another great nugget from our boy Jake Tribby. He's a FSWA Football Writer of the Year. So we got a ton of great staff over here. I can't stress it enough. The Falcons have allowed the league's third highest slot target rate, 36%, and the 9th most receiving yards per game to opposing slot players, while running man coverage at the 10th highest rate. You know what that equals, folks? A Bobby Trees week. You playing a little DFS, maybe you're desperate. We got 4 teams on bye. Think maybe you'd pick up Robert Woods and put him in a lineup?
I've done more desperate things than picking up Robert Woods and putting him in a lineup. So no, I think that's more of a DFS nugget to me than a redraft one. But no, I think that's really fascinating. Good stuff from Jake there. The question here is, the Falcons are a team that selectively shadows AJ Terrell. Do they view Nico Collins as somebody who they're going to shadow, or do they view Tank Dell as also a threat on the perimeter? I think that's the big question here.
Yeah, I had Nico Collins on my bench in like my biggest league. Thank God I still won. I started Javonte Williams over him. Oh, Javonte's playing the Bears. It's going to be great. Oh, I'm a moron. What am I doing? Dameon Pierce. I got so many questions this week from folks saying, should I bench Dameon Pierce? Should I trade Dameon Pierce? It's, I don't know. Dameon Pierce is a guy behind a bad line who's not going to catch a ton of passes. And this team is now falling in love with throwing the forward pass.
On the contrary, poopy pants. The Texans offensive line is eligible to get Juice Scruggs and Titus Howard off of IR this week. So CJ Stroud, you can argue, has navigated maybe part of the toughest part of the season for the Texans. Laramie Tunsil's getting healthier. So there is an opportunity here for Dameon Pierce. I think there's a buy low opportunity on him, Drake, to be completely honest with you.
All right. How about on the other side with the Falcons? Can we do anything with Pitts in London? I mean, there's no stats we have to go into. I mean, it's kind of a joke at this point. I've looked around leagues because I always like trying to buy low on people who are on folks' bench. Drake London's on a lot of folks' bench right now.
They're going to go to
football.
Heineke soon. One of two things is going to happen. Either Desmond Ridder it pulls a Justin Fields and actually starts getting his receivers the football, or they're going to hospital ball Heineke. And like, I know we make fun of him, calling him HB Heineke and all that. I'm still trying to make that a thing. But the reason we call him HB Heineke is because he throws it to covered receivers. And they actually want Drake London and Kyle Pitts, just like last year, and it is worse than last year, and I'll give you credit for hyping this up all off season, Drake. Kyle Pitts and Drake London. Kyle Pitts has the lowest number of catchable targets per fantasy points data. Drake London has the third lowest percentage of catchable targets per fantasy points data. So this is not a tenable offense right now. They will go to Heineke. He's already getting the questions about it. So yes, I do think, I can't believe I'm saying this. I know I'm literally holding on to Kyle Pitts, hoping they go to hospital ball Heineke. And I think they will go to Heineke.
I've sent some low ball offers out there. I mean, we talked about it last week on the show where there was like 26 players in the NFL who had 9 targets. Kyle Pitts was one of them, and they all scored more points than him. If they get a mediocre at best quarterback, I mean, he's going to really start producing at a top 12 level. Let's keep rolling here. Carolina at Detroit. Boy, usually you'd look at this game and you'd be like, oh boy, I want nothing to do with this game. But there's a lot of interesting points here that I really want to dive into. Number one, in fantasy football, which is the business we're in, we wish cast so much stuff. And so many of us thought, hey, Jahmyr Gibbs, he's going to be Alvin Kamara. But he's got the same role as Swift last year. This offense and this staff, they're not changing who they are or what they do. They literally got rid of one guy and replaced him with Gibbs. Montgomery is that what's his name? Jamal Williams. He's getting all that goal line work. Gibbs will literally never get any of that. So that's one thing. Number two, we got to watch out for here. See this Amon-Ra St. Brown abdomen injury? Yeah. That's kind of worrying me.
He says he's going to play. He says he's going to play. And I feel like he's kind of developed the last couple of years, Drake, into a player who doesn't really need to practice. I feel like he's good at what he does and they know what he does. But that is a concern. I think Jared Goff's going to have time to throw in this game, though. And if Amon-Ra St. Brown is out or limited, they might have to ramp up Jameson Williams a little bit quicker than they were planning to. I wouldn't be shocked to see a shot or two to Jameson Williams in this game. I don't know if I'm starting him for fantasy. There are situations where, like, my wife is in a spot where, like, she actually has Amon-Ra St. Brown, and like her flex right now is Kenny Gainwell because, bye weeks and all that stuff. And I'm like, sure, that might be a spot where you just like put Jameson Williams in your lineup and hope he catches a 40-yard pass. But I think that's going to be really interesting here because per fantasy points data, the Panthers pass rush has the lowest quarterback pressure rate over expectation this year in the NFL. When they get there, they're getting there really quick, but they're getting there on the lowest percentage of dropbacks of any team in the NFL. And I think Jared Goff's going to have time to throw the ball in this game.
If Chuba Hubbard's on your waiver wire, I've had some folks ask me this. Hey, who's a good stash? Chuba Hubbard, 14 carries last week, also caught a pair of balls. He played on 54% of the snaps. Miles Sanders nursing a groin injury, not the picture of health. So if Miles Sanders ever would go down, Chuba Hubbard takes this role, becomes a 3-down starter, for this team. And they will check the ball down. We've seen the work in the pass game that Miles Sanders has this year. Anywhere else in this game, Stan Laporta, start him if you got him. I don't think there's a question
Stan
anymore.
Laporta's a start, right? He's a tight end who's catching like 4 passes a game. What else do you need to see from him?
That's all you need. Sometimes people, they kind of overthink the situation. How about in Indianapolis, where the Tennessee Titans come to town? Tennessee, 2.5-point favorite here, and we can't bury the lead. Jonathan Taylor's returning, Joe. So what I love about the Colts is they love feeding their RB1. Every week, their top running back ranks in the top 7 in snaps. The issue, you're playing the Titans, who allow just 12.27 fantasy points per week to running backs, 56.8 yards per game. If you got JT, are you putting him in your lineup this week?
Yes.
Me too. I got the same call.
Yes.
What if maybe not Zach Moss?
I'd probably bench Moss. I mean, but again, it's all dependent on what you have. Like if there is a team where Moss was clearly one of my 2 best running backs, I probably am not sitting him. But no, I think I would sit. Let's rank them separately. Yes, I would sit Moss for JT. I would play JT over Moss. Yes.
What a weird situation. He goes from, I want a new contract, I'm never going to play for you guys, oh, I'm hurt, to, nope, that's all behind me. Talk about it in the offseason. Ankle's fine. Let's rock and roll. Do you think the agent got in his ear, or he just smartened up, or maybe he saw the success that Zach Moss was having and there was no trademark? I don't know. What do you think?
I feel like he probably just realized there was no trade market and he didn't want to lose money and he wanted to come out and be a good soldier. Maybe he saw the locker room gelling around Anthony Richardson and just being like, look, I want to be a part of this and we'll revisit in the offseason. Here's another thing I like, and this is not going to be breaking any news. I know Joe Burrow struggled in this matchup last week, but I think this is a matchup for Michael Pittman to get back on track. He had just 5 targets last week, 1 catch. He caught a 2-point conversion. But of the Titans' 3 primary corners, Christian Fulton, Sean Murphy-Bunting, and Roger McCreary, their left corner, their right corner, and their slot corner. Pittman moves all around, by the way. All of them have given up at least 150 yards receiving and a touchdown in their primary coverage. So no matter where the Colts line up Michael Pittman, this is a spot for Michael Pittman to get back on track. I'd be starting him confidently as a wide receiver too.
And if you want more nuggets like that from Joe, his mismatch report every week at fantasypoints.com. Get over there, sign up, use code GURIFIC25. Is that still active to save 25%?
It is indeed. And by the way, our prices are already discounted 25% because we're a quarter of the way through the season. So just fair. So you get an extra 25% off on top of that.
Breaking news into the show, the Chicago Bears are trading wide receiver Chase Claypool to the Miami Dolphins. That just came across. It won't be breaking news by the time you listen to this podcast, but who knows? Maybe you're stuck at work all day and you're going to hear it. So it's a 2025 6th rounder from Miami for Claypool and a 25 7th rounder. So what do you think there? I mean, that's a real narrow passing tree in Miami. I mean, it's depth.
Yeah, it's one of those things for Miami where like they have like who Ezun Kanma and Braxton Berrios, like Chase Claypool can run, and Miami likes guys who run.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be like, I think Chase Claypool stinks. I've thought Chase Claypool stunk. That's why I thought the Bears trade for Chase Claypool last year was an abject disaster, which it turned out to be. I'm not going to think that. I mean, this is essentially giving a guy away for as free as you possibly can give. It's a 6th and 7th round pick swap 2 years down the road. Okay. That's about as free as it gets. And I mean, the Bears this solidifies one of the worst trades in the last decade. That's all this does. And not a huge, not a needle mover for me. I wouldn't be shocked if Claypool makes a play or two, but for him to become fantasy relevant, no, I don't think so.
All right, last thing on this Colts Titans game. I'm in a super, super deep league, and I got some injuries and bye weeks to contend with. Nick Westbrook-Akine is a guy.
Oh, God.
Crazy deep league. It's 77% route share last week. He ran a route on 77% of the Titans dropbacks, 23% target share. So if Treylon Burks is out again, you never know. I mean, we're digging deep here, folks. Digging real deep.
Bad.
Yeah, tell me about it. Welcome to the Kings Classic 14 team with 3 flex. Saints at the Patriots. This could set offensive football back 100 years. So in this game, we're looking at, can Derek Carr can he be a little healthier? He was terrible last week. I wrote
he did not need to be out.
He shouldn't have been on the field, but he was on the field, and what he was doing was dumping the ball off to Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara had 13 receptions for 33 yards. What the hell is that, Joe?
It is it was an NFL record is what it was, Drake. Not only was it the NFL record from fewest yards in a game with 13 or more catches, it was the record for fewest yards in a game with 10 or more catches. So it was a check down masterpiece. And if you have Alvin Kamara in a PPR league, you're like, thank you very much. The good news is the Patriots are dinged up defensively for Derek Carr. Christian Gonzalez is out for the season. Matthew Judon might be out for the season. They had to trade for J.C. Jackson, which was a terrible signing by the Chargers. 92.1% of Derek Carr's passing yards last week came after the catch. That is the highest rate in any full game so far for any quarterback. He was just 2 of 10 on throws of 10 or more air yards. His 26.5% completion percentage over expectation on such throws was 5th worst in any game so far this season. Every stat tells you Derek Carr should not have been out there last week. The hope is he's healthier this week, and I expect he'll be a little bit healthier this week.
Yeah, he absolutely killed Chris Olave last week, although Olave did have a ball in the end zone, 153 air yards last week, unrealized for Mr. Olave. You know, somebody I threw a trade offer out in, and I didn't see this on my bingo card for 2023. I offered up a trade for Michael Thomas because I was desperate for some wide receiver help. If you need 10 points in a PPR league or so, Michael Thomas is going to get you that this year. He's
And if you need 15 points, he will not get it for you.
No,
That's
not at all.
Yeah, it's like one of those guys.
But bye week bench stash, just please, God, don't get me a 0 like Darnell Mooney did last night. No, Michael Thomas could be your guy. What are your thoughts on this Patriots team? I mean, my God, I saw analysts over the week talking about this is a 1990s offense. They look like a high school team out there. It's too simplistic. They have no speed, and it's just Ramondre running into a brick wall.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. You know, I just traded for Ramondre in our Fantasy Points Superflex Dynasty League. I'm tanking, though. Like, I traded Aaron Jones for Ramondre. I'm like, all right, I'm going to trade an older player who's more effective now for a younger player who's not very effective. I'm in complete tank mode, Drake. I have 3 first-round picks this coming year, and if Ramondre starts to pick it up, either I have an asset to help my team next year, or I can flip him for a pick. So that's what I did. I'll buy low on Ramondre, but I'm not like feeling like great about it. But I do think at some point he'll be an RB2. It's just that they have no speed, and you need speed in the NFL in 2023. It's you don't need Dolphins speed, but you need some, and they don't have it. I mean, I cannot believe they signed Juju to the same contract they signed that the Raiders signed Jacoby Myers to. But I mean, that's just Bill has never been able to evaluate wide receivers. It's his absolute blind spot.
Stevenson averaging just 2.7 yards per carry in a league worst 1.68 yards after contact per attempt. Hashtag yikes. All right. The Giants, fresh off that abomination on Monday night, traveled down to South Beach where they are 12.5-point dogs to Miami. Oof. Hey, I got another Jake Tribby bomb right here. This was fantastic. The Giants blitz and play man coverage, run man coverage at a top 3 rate. Okay. Tyreek Hill, top 4 in yards per route run against a blitz at 4.2 and against man coverage. So he's saying right here, this is a monster spot for Tyreek Hill. If you got him, obviously in season long, you're playing him. DFS wise, we're giving you some nuggets here. This is a huge spot maybe for Tyreek Hill. You know, everybody else, A-Chain, Mostert, you don't need us to tell you, start these guys. For the Giants, though, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, 2 young guys drafted, a year apart, starting to kind of maybe turn the corner here. And we're going to get them some increased workloads, deep PPR. Maybe you can use Wan'Dale. Hyatt, I see more of his stash. This Giants offensive line, the decimated, Joe. 10 sacks last week. The play is the Miami defense.
Evan Neal's picking fights with the fans. Andrew Thomas, Shane Lemieux, John Michael Schmitz, all out of practice this week. I think Michael Schmitz got injured on the tush push, so not every team can run it successfully. The Dolphins, per our offensive line, defensive line tool at Fantasy Points Data, are the only team to have a top 5 matchup in both the pass game and the run game in the trenches this week. The Dolphins are going to be able to do whatever they want. Wink Martindale, the Giants defensive coordinator, I don't know if you saw his quote. I got a chuckle out of it, a little bit of fatalistic humor. Somebody asked him, like, how are you sleeping preparing for the Miami offense? And he said, well, I'm sleeping like a baby. I'm getting about 2 hours of sleep, waking up crying and going to the bathroom, and then I go back and try to fall asleep again. That's what he said. And believe me, I think he probably meant that with a lot of sincerity, because I don't see how the Giants stop this team. I don't see how the Giants move the ball against this team with that offensive line. Saquon Barkley, I would just love to see that guy healthy and in another uniform at some point. But this is look, it's a 12.5-point line. That's a lot in the NFL. We see underdogs of 12.5 points win outright. I ain't stepping in front of Miami this week, though.
Remember everybody in training camp, every beat reporter, that Darren Waller's uncoverable. Nobody can stop Darren Waller. Well, he's going against the Giants defense, but I dug this stat up on Fantasy Points Data. So the Giants have a minus 76 net scoring output this year, meaning teams against them have scored 76 more points. Darren Waller has run a route on less than 70% of the Giants dropbacks. Does that shock you that it's like 69.7?
Well,
But I mean, what are we doing with this guy?
I don't know what the tape says because I haven't studied the Giants offense in depth in that regard. But what that tells me, typically when a tight end's only running a route on 70% of dropbacks, even if it's a receiving first tight end, is they're either using that tight end or another tight end to stay in and block because the offensive line's in shambles. That's what that says to me.
What do you do with Daniel Jones if you're in fantasy right now and he's a quarterback in your team?
I hope he runs around, but I don't feel good about playing him. No, I'm not playing him this week.
No, I dropped. There's got to be somebody better on the waiver wire than Daniel Jones.
I mean, I picked up and started Sam Howell in a number of leagues. Like, come on.
Mm-hmm. Ravens travel to Heinz Field. I'll never call it Architecture Stadium. I don't know what it is. Tom Brawley is a Steelers fan. He
for sure, but they call it Heinz.
Yeah, it's still Heinz Field. The Ravens 4-point favorites here on the road. These are rivalry games. We're going to see the Ravens getting healthy. Kenny Pickett's banged up. He's going to try to play, though. So the buzz around the fantasy universe is this UDFA, Keaton Mitchell, for the Ravens. He's coming off IR, Joe. Now, here's a kid who has never taken a snap in the league, but he's got major juice, and Lord knows this offense needs it. Justice Hill, toe injury. Gus Edwards is Gus Edwards. I added him in several leagues, but I tell people,
by the way,
breaks.
He's a UDFA who has never taken an NFL snap and is coming off an injury. And he's rostered in like 30% of Yahoo leagues. That's how desperate people are for running backs.
I picked him up. But at the end of the day, what do the Ravens like to do? They love using multiple running backs. I think even if Keaton Mitchell hits, what is he good for a week? I don't know, 35% of the carries, maybe. Do they dump the ball off to the running backs in Baltimore much? So I have very tempered expectations for him. I'll be honest, if you're looking to trade out there might not be a better time to trade Keaton Mitchell than today. It's always that unknown of you can trade him with somebody. Hey, listen, I don't know. You want to trade? We talked about Michael Thomas. Give me Michael Thomas for him. I don't know. Give me a backup tight end on your team.
Let's flip over to Pittsburgh side here. Kenny Pickett practiced in full on Thursday, and it looks like he's going to play, whether it's with a knee brace or what. I do not understand it. I do not understand it. Why would he play in this game? They're on bye next week against the Ravens defense. The offense has already been broken. I do not get this. Mike Tomlin does not fire coordinators, but if this is a disaster, I mean, here's your spot to fire a coordinator midseason, right?
There's no reason for him to play. You're down Deontay still. You're going to be without Freiermuth. You got Pickens, Calvin Austin, and the corpse of Allen Robinson running around out there. I do like what I'm seeing from Jaylen Warren. I mean, he looks fantastic, getting some dump offs. I think he's seeing up to 6 targets a week in some of these games.
I think Najee Harris looks pretty good too. It's just people aren't noticing it because this offense is so bad. And that, like, Ross Tucker asked me on Wednesday, he's like, is Najee Harris their goal line back? And I said, I'll let you know if they ever get to the goal line, Ross. That was my response to that.
Did you see, and I'm sure you did because you own the company, did you see the tweet that Fantasy Points put out at Fantasy PTS? This was tremendous work. I don't know if it was Trey Camberling, our social media guy, or who it was. The Matt Canada burner account tweet.
I mean, look, we've seen it. I'm a Sixers fan. We saw it with Brian Colangelo. It can happen.
If you haven't seen it, folks, make sure you're following at Fantasy PTS, our company account. But they found this at Danny Football 77, a quote unquote guy named Dan Robbins, and his avatar is just a little Steelers hat. And everywhere he goes, he's just defending Matt Canada. And then somebody went, and this is a brilliant move, and did like the reverse login thing where it sends you a notification of like, okay, we're going to send we sent an email to your email address to fix your password or whatever it was. And it was like m blank 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 at s.com, which who knows what his email is with the Steelers, but either way, it's funny. It could be a total work someone did.
I can tell you my email with the Eagles was joseph.dolan@eagles.nfl.com. That was my Eagles email address when I worked there. Don't send an email there because it doesn't work anymore. But that was so it does kind of line up. So I would
What a
not be
dope.
stunned. Look, it happens. It happens. We saw it with the Colangelos in Philadelphia.
Oh, that's the best. That is the best. I haven't even looked at that's an active account anymore. One last thing on this game. Lamar looks great.
Yes,
The
he does.
game here is going to be, can Pittsburgh pressure him? Awesome stat from the grinder, Tom Brawley, in his Game Hub article. Lamar averaging 7.1 yards per attempt with a 73.3 passer rating on 42 dropbacks when pressured. The Steelers are pressuring quarterbacks at the second highest rate in the NFL, but they're allowing the third highest YPA and the fourth highest passer rating when they fail to generate pressure. So if Watt and the boys can get after him, it'll be a good day. I mean, it's very simplistic to say that, but Lamar looking great. Back to his MVP form. I'm a big fan. I'm glad if you got him in your mid rounds. How about the Bengals and this offense going to the Cardinals? I'm going to say this right now, Joe. We think we know everything in the NFL. We watch something one week and we make definitive statements, and then it goes 180 degrees the other way. I'm calling right now. Joe Burrow throws for 303 this week in Arizona, just because that's the NFL.
And no T. Higgins, perhaps, who hasn't practiced these last 2 weeks.
Why
Joe
not?
Burrow said it was the best. It was the best he's felt coming out of a game. So look, Jamar Chase is going to have a blow up game at some point, and it could be this week. But I mean, how do you feel good about the Bengals, though? How do you feel good about them? If it happens, it happens, Drake. But I mean, I very happily benched Joe Burrow for Sam Howell, and I'm not regretting that move.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Ayuk went nuts last week against this Cardinals secondary for almost 150 yards. So Jamar Chase, who is always bleeping open, can have a monster game. Tyler Boyd, in theory, should see more work, but he's a slot guy. You know, I don't necessarily think they're going to move him outside to play in these two wide sets. They're just going to play. What's the kid's name? Who's going to? I think it's one of the white kids they got playing wide receiver out there. But either way, I don't know. I've written articles this week where I said just trade all the Bengals. This is just kind of broken. This year.
And I don't know what you're getting right now, though. That's the problem. So it's just, you might just have to sit on it and just hope you're okay.
You buy in this Michael Wilson talk for the Arizona Cardinals. Production's going up now, 4 straight games. I drafted him in a couple of deep leagues, and I've had him on my bench. He's looking good. Is he going to score 2 touchdowns every week? No, but Josh Dobbs is propping this offense up.
No, I'm absolutely buying it. I bought it in the offseason. And I bought it when I thought Colt McCoy was going to be his quarterback, because he has size and he can run. And that size and that ability to separate on the perimeter is something none of these other receivers can do. So, yeah, I think you could start him as a wide receiver 3 this week with a couple of teams on bye. I know plenty of people who are starting him, and he should be rostered in just about every league right now.
Yeah, that's my buddy Drew Davenport. We had him on the 2 Point Stance earlier talking about auctions. I was on a waiver wire podcast for his show. He goes, what are you giving, or how much fab are you spending on Michael Wilson this week? I go, 0, because he's already on my roster. Should have listened to me all offseason.
I mean, yeah, like that's absolutely right. You're 100% right to do that. I mean, I think it's a great, it was a great buy in the offseason. He was an auto 18th round pick for me on Underdog. And yeah, it looks like there were obviously better picks I could have made there, like Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams, who I did draft Kyron a number of times. But no, Michael Wilson was an auto 18th round pick for me, and I'm not regretting that.
You mentioned Puka and Kyron Williams. They're at home this week against our beloved Philadelphia Eagles. The Birds, who still really haven't looked great on offense all season, are a 4.5-point favorite. Cooper Kupp looks to return this week, and boy, oh boy, I think he could eat against this Eagles team that has all sorts of problems covering the slot. They just signed Bradley Roby off the street. Who knows if he even plays in this game? If I got Cooper Kupp and there's questions, can I play Cooper Kupp? Absolutely, I'm starting Cooper Kupp this week. There's not even a question in my mind.
You have to play him. I mean, he was a guy who the last time he was healthy won the Triple Crown. So I think you have to play him. The Eagles have problems covering in the back end. The concern here is the concern it always is for the Rams. Matthew Stafford's dinged up. Can they protect him against this Eagles front, which, by the way, will not have Fletcher Cox this week? But that's just taking one defensive tackle out of their already lethal rotation. I think the Eagles The story's going to be told at the line of scrimmage, as it is in every Eagles game. If they can get after Matthew Stafford, they got after Sam Howell last week. Howell made some plays with his legs. Stafford's not going to make as many plays with his legs. So that's the big question we have here. The question, of course, also is Nacua, who was playing Cooper Kupp's Z spot. He was the Z receiver. Obviously, Sean McVay is going to get both of them on the field. He's not going to bench Puka Nacua. But it's going to be interesting to see how Puka Nacua is used in this game.
Yeah, I'm still starting Puka Nacua. Like I said,
for sure.
Cooper Kupp. Start all those guys. I think this could be just a shootout of shootouts of the weekend here. And I think in DFS, you're going to get a lot of ownership coming from this game. I want to see something from Dallas Goedert because I start him in multiple leagues. But I mean, geez, Louise, he's doing nothing out there. 2 for 25. He's got 19 targets on the whole season. Like, do you think this has something to do with the new OC and they're just trying to feature things on the outside?
I'm sure it
Hurts
has something
isn't seeing him field well.
I'm sure it has something to do with that. I mean, like, look, you have coordinators on both sides of the ball. Hurts had some off-season ankle surgery. He came off that shoulder injury. They're 4-0 and they haven't played a good game yet. Like that's a sign of a good team, and they're finding their way through it. And eventually they're going to lose a game. Maybe it's this week in LA against a tough opponent. I think Goddard's going to be fine though. You can't sit him. Like, who are you sitting him for? Hayden Hurst, it's one of those things where you just have to suck it up. I think they'll get Goddard involved at some point.
Let me ask you this question. We have someone in our chat here. Brian from Syracuse asks, hey, Joe, who would you start in a half-point PPR? Tyler Higbee or Dallas Goedert?
Probably Goddard this week because Kupp's back.
Yeah. I mean, Higbee, 5+ receptions in back-to-back games. Higbee's a good player. I mean, he should at least be rostered. I was surprised when I saw him get dropped. Jets Broncos. Here we go. The Nathaniel Hackett Bowl. Wow. This game should have so much juice. If you remember in the offseason, Sean Payton went off and he was talking about how Nathaniel Hackett did such a terrible job coaching the Broncos and working with Russell Wilson. So this should be fun. I got a feeling this could get chippy and it could just be a blast to watch. Broncos 2.5-point home favorites over the Jets, who I got a feeling the Jets, and everybody wanted to make a big thing about the Jets. Oh, they look great. And, Zach Wilson played one good game of football. God bless America. Do the Jets have the same letdown that the Commanders just had, where they lost a heartbreaking game they felt they should have won, and now they go on the road here to Denver and they just totally get whitewashed, even though Denver sucks?
I think Zach Wilson's a good DFS play this week, and I'm a little surprised how few people are actually playing him. And by the way, you can look at both angles, and I completely agree with your angle. And a Zach Wilson stack with Alan Lazard, I think, is defensible. Damari Mathis is Pro Football Focus's lowest graded cornerback on the season. We have the numbers on him at fantasypoints.com, and they are disastrous. Damari Mathis has allowed 259 receiving yards, which is second most to Emmanuel Forbes. He's allowed 3 touchdowns, tied for second most. He's allowed 0.47 PPR fantasy points per coverage snap, which is 5th most. And he's allowed a league high 155.3 passer rating, which is nearly perfect when targeted this year. And he is PFF's lowest graded corner on the year. And I think Patrick Surtain is going to follow Garrett Wilson in this game. Alan Lazard is a good wide receiver play this week.
I like it. How about Breece Hall? We had Salah come out this week, say the handcuffs are off, no more quote unquote pitch count, which drives me crazy in football. Breece Hall hasn't had over 13 touches in a game. Remember week 1 when he just exploded? He's running down the field for 70 yards, looking great. Michael Carter's still a factor. Dalvin Cook stinks. He's dust. But Breece Hall, do you think this is finally where they're going to start getting him going and they realize they need to feed him to take a little pressure off of this offense?
I think this is a big Breece Hall week.
Let's go. How about on the other side? Javonte Williams was beat up. Everyone goes out and they pick up Jaleel McLaughlin, the all-time leading rusher in the history of the NCAA. And then Javonte Williams practices yesterday. What are you kidding me? He might actually play in this week. Everybody spent all his fab on McLaughlin, who looks miles ahead of Samaje Perine. What do you do in this situation if you got one of these Broncos backs? drink.
I feel like McLaughlin has the juice. And I think he's my favorite play of the group this week, only because I feel like he's got juice. Javante's dinged up and Pirine doesn't have explosion. They're going to put Pirine in situations where they need to protect. But I think McLaughlin's got the opportunity to maybe be the Darren Sproles for this backfield. I'm not trying to say he's going to explode like Darren Sproles, but I think Sean Payton loves players like this who have a different level, a different gear than his other running backs.
I'm worried about my guy Marvin Mims. You know, we thought he was going to have this new role with the Broncos, and he crapped the bed. You know, it's tough to throw deep on these Jets, allowing only 10.1 yards per reception to wide receivers. You know, last week they really shut down MVS, which basically everyone shuts down MVS. So I might have to start him in a league. That's why I was trying to trade for guys like Michael Thomas. So buyer or beware out there if you have to start Marvin Mims. But KC heading to Minnesota. I got a feeling if you're making DFS lineups, this is going to be another game with a ton of ownership. Kansas City, 3.5-point road favorites. And with the Chiefs, hey, we know what it is. It's Mahomes, it's Kelsey. You can't start any of these wide receivers. There's a lot of buzz this week. People are getting more excited about Rashee Rice, but I mean, I don't know. I'm dropping Sky Moore, Tony, Ross. I mean, you don't even need to roster these guys anymore.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the thing. You said this is going to have a lot of DFS ownership. Is it? Who are you playing from the Chiefs? So.
I think people, I guess, of the shootout
maybe
potential.
Rashee Rice, like Sky Moore's had a goose egg in the catch department in 2 games. Like, which of these Chief receivers do you feel good about playing?
Well, I think what you get is maybe you get Kelsey in there. You get, people, if they want to go Mahomes, you do a bring back with, I don't know if you could afford to bring Justin Jefferson back, but maybe, Osborne's still playing well ahead of Jordan Addison. You get Hawkinson in there. So I think there's some opportunity here. What about this running back situation in Kansas City? I saw this week they interviewed Jerick McKinnon in front of his locker, and they were like, are they just waiting until the playoffs to unleash you? He's like, man, I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking, but Pacheco's looking really good out there. He's career high in rushing a week ago. He caught the ball for 43 yards, looked really good against the Jets. He looks like an every week RB2.
He absolutely is an every week RB2. He's running with power and he's getting targets in the passing game. And for a Chief running back to come through, you need targets in the passing game. That's why Jerick McKinnon was a number 1 running back down the stretch last year, because he was catching the ball. And Pacheco's now catching the ball. So he's a guy I don't even want like questions about. Like he's in a good offense. I don't think the Chiefs have played great offense this year, but he's in a good offense and he's getting the ball every week and in the passing game now. He's absolutely an RB2.
Madison had his season low snap share a week ago with Cam Akers active, but over the last 2 weeks, Madison has run for damn near 200 yards. What do you think about this Vikings backfield here? If you got to buy one of these guys, who are you putting the chip on for the rest of the season?
It's Madison. I mean,
okay.
37 for 188 in the last 2 games. He responded to a disappointing start. The thing he's got to do is he's got to clean up the mistakes, because the mistakes are why they traded for other players. That's why they traded for Cam Akers, because he's fumbling the ball and he's dropping the ball. But no, he's the one I'm betting on. It's Madison.
What a game we've got on Sunday night. This is going to be fun. The Dallas Cowboys head to the San Francisco 49ers. Niners, 3.5-point favorites. And I mean, start them if you got them. This is just going to be awesome. If you enjoy football and you're an Eagles fan, you can root against, both teams. But Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, McCaffrey, everybody, just start everybody. I don't know. I know there's 2 really good defenses here, but guys are going to get theirs.
There's one I want to highlight here before we move on to the Monday night game, because you're right about this, Drake. It's one of those fantasy games where everybody's excited to play it, to play this game and to watch this game, but you really just kind of are more intrigued by the all 22 breakdown. Go listen to an actual NFL podcast, to break this game down. 2 things I do want to point out. Number 1, Dak Prescott hasn't finished as a QB1 at all this year. This is probably not a spot where I'm starting him against this 49er defense. So maybe he's the one. I'm starting CeeDee Lamb. You have to start CeeDee Lamb, but I'm not starting Dak Prescott. The player I want to highlight here, not that anybody's benching him, but I particularly like the matchup. Our Ryan Heath uncovered this bit of trivia. In games in which a player is active this year, no receiver has a higher market share of his team's receiving yards than Brandon Ayuk. 45.1%. Justin Jefferson's at 44.7%. Overall, the Cowboys cornerback Darren Bland has played well, filling in for Trevon Diggs. He's allowed just a 38.8 passer rating when targeted. It's fifth best among qualified corners. But he's also a better slot corner than an outside corner. And the Cowboys have gone utterly unchallenged so far this year. Obviously, they've played the Giants, the Jets, the Cardinals, and the Patriots offenses. I mean, probably 4 of the bottom 10 offenses in the NFL. Ayuk lines up 67% of the time on the left side of the formation or in the slot, and that's where he'll see Darren Bland. I think this is a huge test for Bland, a bigger test than it is for Ayuk.
That's a great nugget. And, Ryan Heath's a great young writer out there in fantasy. Make sure you guys are going out and follow him. Get on fantasypoints.com, read all his amazing work. This is going to be a fun game. I can't wait to just crack a beer Sunday night and sit back and watch it. There's no fantasy.
I'm looking forward to it. Yep.
There's no breakdown you need from us on that one. Green Bay on Monday night, they're going to go to the desert to play the Raiders. Raiders 1-point favorites in this one. Kind of the Packers. I want to see what we can get from Aaron Jones. He's had this hamstring issue. He's really played one good game all season. And I want to see what we can get out of him. Maybe a little bounce back from this Green Bay offense. Christian Watson, let's get healthy, take another step forward, kind of return form here. And, it's a great get-well defense against this Raiders secondary. That's for damn
no
sure.
doubt about it. I think the Packers offensive line is getting as healthy as it maybe can be. I think John Runyon's still dinged up, and obviously Bakhtiari should retire. He's out for the season.
Yeah.
Elton Jenkins, Zach Tom, I think are back at practice. So the Packers offensive line should be relatively healthy. They need Aaron Jones and Christian Watson to play bigger roles because those are their explosive players. But I also think Romeo Dobbs is a good wide receiver 3. He's had a good rapport with Jordan Love so far.
And, the Aiden O'Connell experience probably ends this week. Jimmy G can return from the protocol. That'll help Devontae Adams. He had a little shoulder issue, but returned to the game. Really going to help Jacoby Myers. Now, if you want to buy a low candidate for the weekend, for me, it's always Jacoby Myers because they throw to 2 guys in this offense, right? And great nugget from my guy, the grinder, Tom Brawley. 22 targets through his the first 2 games here with Jacoby Myers. 31% target share in those 2 games with Jimmy G. That's incredible, okay? Go out and buy Jacoby Myers low before the weekend. Tell him your boy Drake sent you. You'll love it. And then Josh Jacobs, he's getting the work. Just not much is happening out here. It's just kind of is what he is. I don't know. The line stinks. The offense stinks.
Yeah, I think Jimmy G, yeah. I mean, at least he'll throw the ball to the guys we want him to throw it to, right? Josh Jacobs is starting to get going a little bit. He got going in the passing game last week, but he'll be all right eventually. I love this Raiders offense. It's like a mini version of the Vikings. Like they throw it to their good players. It's a mini version of the Eagles. It's a bad version of those teams. They throw it to their good players. It's a bad offense, but they throw it to their good players.
Yeah, a week ago, Montgomery got the Packers for 121 and 3 touchdowns. So, Hey, who knows? Maybe Josh Jacobs has a massive week on Monday
night. Not like
night.
you're sitting them.
Yeah. What are you going to do? Joe, this was an awesome show. Glad we could get everybody together. Hope you guys are enjoying what we're doing here on the 2 Point Stance and all the other great shows across the Fantasy Points Podcast Network. Make sure you're subscribed to that podcast feed. You're over on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Fantasy Points. There is so much content. Get on the website. Like Joe said, you're getting 25% off already. We'll give you another 25% off with code GURIFIC25. There's never been a better time to get in at fantasypoints.com and kick your league mates' asses, all right? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to cash checks and hoist trophies, and there's no better team in the business to help you do it than the boys over at fantasypoints.com. Joe, enjoy your weekend of Phillies watching and Evan Williams drinking, and we'll be back next week.
I am looking forward to it. I want to thank the baseball gods for giving me perfect scheduling. 6 p.m. on a Penn State bye week Saturday. And Monday, 6 p.m., where the game should be wrapping up. basically by the end of the first quarter of the Monday Night Football game, man, that's about as perfect as it gets for me.
Yeah, I don't have to worry about any conflicts with my Yankees this weekend. So, yeah, I'll be sitting back myself. All right, everybody.
The conflict for Yankee fans is with the Yankees themselves, Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone, from what I understand.
Well, that'll be another podcast for the offseason. So, all right, for Dolan, I'm Drake. We'll see you guys next time on the 2 Point Stance.